And let's take a look at one of the most spectacular flowering trees in the Ohio Valley. We do find this in the Appalachian foothills and into southern Pennsylvania in places, mostly in the limestone soils. And very common in the Ohio Valley in the limestone areas and also in areas that have well-drained soils. You won't find this in your swamp forests. You won't find this in areas where water sits too long, but on the hillsides it's a very common plant. And this is our eastern redbud. And these branches are just covered with these beautiful pink and purple flowers for several weeks in April, sometimes even in late March. They'll start to bloom. And they're often found on these hillsides where there's a break in the forest canopy allowing more sunlight to get through. I've got several growing right here. This is on the bluffs of the Little Miami River. There's a gorge in the river here at the Fort Ancient State Memorial. Very steep soil that drains easily and allows these plants to prosper. Let's stop for a minute. I got a couple more right up the trail here. Boy, and these sure are pretty with the backdrop of a blue sky on a cool April morning here. And these flowers just cover the trees. And the fruit of this tree is actually a bean pod. I'll show you what those look like in just a minute. I've got a few from last year's crop that I can put on this video as well. But let's just walk up this trail a little bit more here. And you hike these woods in the spring and there's always something to look at. Purple is a very common color with these trees and also with the wildflowers. We got the larkspur, the phlox, and this particular hillside even has a variety of spiderwort that's purple as well in a few weeks. So purple is a real common color in the spring. We've also got some dogwood in this woodlot, and I'm going to get back to that in a few weeks. It's starting to open up, but it needs a few more warm days to get its flowers. But meanwhile, the canopy is still barren. These oak trees, the red oak and the chinkapin oak, haven't even thought about leafing out yet. So this is the redbud's chance to make its show and to start to get its leaves before the other trees start to steal some of the sunlight. And here's our Ohio buckeye, just for reference. I did a segment on that a couple weeks ago. And here's one here that's actually starting to get its flower. And we'll get back to those when they're fully open. And here's our bean pod of the eastern redbud. I've got a quarter in there for scale, so it's about 3 inches long. It has tiny seeds inside of it. I could probably get one to come out here if I crack this open. And there's a little itty bitty seed in there about the size of a pea, not even the size of a pea. Very small seed. But if you get in the right habitat where there's plenty of sun, at least partial sun, these trees will reproduce in great quantities. There's places in northern Kentucky between Lexington and Cincinnati where these trees just cover the hillsides. These are lands that used to be pastures that have since been put out of use and let go back to seed. And that's one of the plants that comes up in great quantity along with the red cedar. And another type of habitat where we often find the eastern redbud is an old abandoned agricultural land. I'm at the edge of a pasture here, the Twin Creek Metro Park in Montgomery County, Ohio. This pasture hasn't been used as a pasture for many years, but it has been maintained as open land. And along what used to be the fence row around the pasture, we've got all kinds of eastern redbud. These plants like sun. They grow in the understory of woods. As long as there's enough sun getting through to keep them happy, they're fine, but you won't find them in the deepest shade. But here they got all the sun they could want. I'll go right down the trail. We got a nice big patch right over here. And here's some 20, 25 foot high redbud trees. They can live a long time. They grow slowly. And I've found them 8-10 inches in diameter sometimes, but often they're smaller than that. And they've got some seedlings right here. They're just getting started. And then right over here along the edge of this pasture, there's a whole population of them here. Probably 20 or 30 different plants right here, reaching for the sun and getting all these flowers. So again, this is a sun-loving plant that we'll find in the understory of mature forest, as long as there's some breaks in the canopy, often on south or west facing slopes that dry out a little quicker and the trees tend to be a little more sparse. But this is our eastern redbud with its spring appearance, and quite an appearance it is.